Why is it that just when things begin to go right, you find yourself reaching for the detonator? You've finally landed the promotion you've worked years to earn. Yet suddenly, you're skipping meetings, showing up late, brushing close to the edge of disciplinary action. You've met someone kind, available, and emotionally healthy, but instead of leaning in, you vanish behind cold texts and delayed responses. You start that creative project, the one that lights your soul like a lantern, and halfway through, you ghost it. This isn't laziness. This isn't a lack of motivation. This is something far more intimate, more brutal, the self-sabotage, and what's truly haunting is that you often know you're doing it, yet can't stop. But here's the unsettling truth. You are not failing because you're weak. You are failing because on some deep, hidden level, you believe you don't deserve to succeed. There's a war raging inside you, a war between the part of you that dreams and dares, and the part that whispers, "You're not enough. You never were." Why would anyone fight against their own progress? Why would you light fires in your own house and then grieve the smoke? To answer that, we must go to a place deeper than productivity hacks or surface-level self-help mantras. We must explore the architecture of the self, the fragmented psyche shaped by early wounds, covert contracts, and unconscious loyalties. Self-sabotage is not a failure of will. It is a strategy. A twisted one, yes, but a strategy nonetheless, crafted in childhood, honed in adolescence, and now executing flawlessly in adulthood. It's the psyche's desperate attempt to avoid pain, rejection, or shame by ensuring we never get too high, too visible, too loved. Imagine a child punished for speaking out, rejected for needing too much, shamed for shining too brightly. That child learns. Safety lies in smallness. Safety lies in silence. Safety lies in failure. Now fast forward 20 years, every time you try to expand, that same child within yanks the emergency brake. You're not consciously choosing this. That's the real tragedy. The roots are subterranean. They operate through the subconscious, through old neural pathways carved like ancient rivers by emotional trauma. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Think about that. You're not broken. You're programmed, not by a machine, but by experiences, traumas you minimized, betrayals you dismissed, narratives you inherited. And what was once adaptive behavior, shrinking, avoiding, pleasing, procrastinating, is now a prison. But it's a comfortable one. Comfortable because it's familiar. Comfortable because success, love, joy, these are unfamiliar territories, and the unknown terrifies the unconscious mind. This is where self-sabotage thrives, in the tension between the life you want and the beliefs you hold about what you deserve. You may say you want intimacy, but the moment someone sees the real you, panic arises, because if they see you, they could leave you. You may say you want success, but success brings attention, and attention brings scrutiny, and scrutiny could reveal the shame you've hidden for years. And so, better to fail by your own hand than be exposed by another's. The Greek tragedians understood this, that the greatest wounds are self-inflicted, that humans are not destroyed by enemies, but by their own inner contradictions. The true antagonist is not out there. It's in here. So if you've ever wondered why your life feels like a loop, why the same patterns repeat no matter how much you try, you must ask not what you're doing wrong, but who inside you is afraid of things going right. Because if you don't name the saboteur, it will continue to act in shadows, and you will continue to mistake its wreckage for reality. And so we begin not with blame but with curiosity, not with a strategy but with a mirror. The question is not, how do I stop sabotaging? The question is, what part of me believes I am safer in suffering? There was a time you didn't question your worth. Before the mirrors of judgment, before the praise that felt conditional, before the wounds that taught you love could be revoked, you existed freely. As a child, your self-expression wasn't calculated. It was instinctual. You laughed loudly, cried unapologetically, reached out with open arms. You asked for what you needed, but then something shifted. Maybe it was a withdrawn mother, emotionally vacant, who only smiled when you were quiet, obedient, pleasant. Maybe it was a father whose love came on a timer, available only when you performed well, succeeded, or mirrored his moods. Or perhaps it was the absence of chaos, not through affection but through your compliance. You learned to anticipate needs, hide your mess, dim your shine. You became good to avoid becoming abandoned. This is how the inner saboteur is born, not from malice, but from misattuned love. You see, the human nervous system is wired for survival. And as children, survival is synonymous with connection. When faced with the choice between authenticity and attachment, a child will always choose attachment. It's not conscious, it's cellular. So you made a trade. You exiled parts of yourself to stay close to those you depended on. You silenced your anger. You minimized your sadness. You masked your fear with forced smiles and perfectionism. In return, you received crumbs of affection, glimpses of approval, or at least the absence of punishment. But here's the catch. Whatever part of you had to abandon to be loved, you now unconsciously sabotage as an adult. If your boldness was punished, you now sabotage ambition. If your vulnerability was ignored, you now sabotage intimacy. If your joy was mocked, you now sabotage happiness. These self-destructive behaviors are not random. They are scripts downloaded in childhood, executed in adulthood. Jean-Paul Sartre once wrote, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." But what happens when what we make of ourselves was molded in an environment where love had conditions? You see, most self-sabotage isn't a failure of self-esteem. It's a loyalty to a former self who had to survive without it. Loyalty to the child who believed that being invisible was safer than being seen. Loyalty to the teenager who found control in perfection and numbness in procrastination. Loyalty to the narrative. If I succeed too much, they'll leave. If I feel too good, something bad will happen. If I ask for more, I'll be rejected. Even now, these narratives whisper like gospel in the background of your daily life. They're not just thoughts. They're embodied truths, wired into your nervous system, encoded into your reflexes. It's why you ghost people when they get too close. Why you binge after a week of disciplined eating. Why you start arguments on the eve of something good. It's not because you don't want these things. It's because you once learned somewhere deep in the past that having them meant danger. And so the saboteur becomes your shield, your distorted protector. Not evil, just outdated. It speaks in behaviors, not words. It doesn't say, "Don't apply for the job." It just floods you with anxiety, distracts you with scrolling, and offers the sweet relief of giving up. It doesn't say, "You don't deserve love." It just nudges you toward people who confirm it or makes you unbearable to those who don't. This isn't weakness. This is programming. And once you recognize the source, the spell begins to weaken. The inner saboteur is not your enemy. It's a part of you that once protected you. But what protects the child can destroy the adult. To heal, you must do the unthinkable. Not silence the saboteur, but listen to it. Trace its voice. Understand its fears. Reparent the part of you that was taught love must be earned with suffering. And then rewrite the script. Not with affirmations plastered over trauma, but with new experiences that contradict the old story. Because when you see your sabotage not as sabotage, but as a wounded loyalty, you begin to understand why letting go of it feels like betrayal, even as it holds you back. Why does the idea of living fully, loving freely, succeeding boldly, expressing unapologetically, fill you not only with desire, but dread? You envision the life you want. It stirs something ancient and electric in you. The freedom, the creativity, the impact, the love. It's intoxicating. You can taste it, almost touch it. But then you recoil. You sabotage the job interview. You pick a fight with the partner. You abandon the novel halfway through. Why? Because having what you want means becoming someone new. And that transformation, though thrilling, is terrifying. Here lies the paradox. You crave the future, but you grieve the past it threatens to erase. To step into your potential is to betray the identity you've carried like a second skin. The careful, broken, brilliant scaffolding you built to survive. The self who's been with you the longest. Who are you if not the overthinker, the perfectionist, the self-deprecator, What happens when your pain is no longer your compass? Freedom demands ego death, and ego death feels like annihilation. Arthur Schopenhauer once observed, "Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world." And so, we fear that stepping outside our internal borders, no matter how painful those borders are, might destroy us. You sabotage not because you don't want the new life, but because you believe the new life will erase who you are. Or worse, that you'll rise only to fall harder, that you'll love only to be abandoned, that you'll succeed only to lose everything and confirm the very shame you tried to outrun. It's not the dream you fear, it's what the dream will demand from you. Will you still belong to your tribe if you outgrow their patterns? Will you still be loved if you're no longer broken, struggling, relatable? Will you even recognize yourself? These fears are not irrational. They're primal. To the subconscious, safety is sameness. Even suffering becomes sacred if it means belonging. Better the familiar pain than the unfamiliar joy. And this is where the sabotage becomes cunning. You don't flat out say no to the new life. You just delay it. You research more. You wait for the perfect time. You get just busy enough to justify inaction. It's brilliant. It's rationalized. It's devastating. Because in the quiet moments when the distractions fall away, you're playing small. You're stalling. You're waiting for permission that will never come. Aldous Huxley wrote, "Most human beings have an almost infinite capacity for taking things for granted. We take for granted that we'll have more time, more clarity, more courage. But time doesn't give clarity. Action does. Every day you delay your becoming, the inner saboteur grows stronger. Not because it's evil, but because it's unchallenged. Every time you walk away from something you love because it feels too big, your nervous system learns. Expansion is dangerous. And yet, there is another part of you, a whisper beneath the fear, the part that's not afraid to evolve, the part that's already glimpsed your future self and knows that to get there, something must die. Maybe not the whole self, but the mask, the myth, the narrative that says, I can't handle joy. I don't deserve peace. I'm not meant to shine. You are not just afraid of failure. You are afraid that success will strip away your camouflage and leave you naked, exposed, unrecognizable even to yourself. But here's what's more terrifying. Dying with your brilliance still trapped inside. Living a life so safe that nothing real ever touches you. So when you next sabotage, pause. Don't shame it. Examine it. Ask, what future does this action protect me from? And what part of me believes that future is a threat? You may find the saboteur isn't trying to destroy you. It's trying to keep you small enough to survive. But you were not born to survive. You were born to expand. There's a silence in your story that didn't begin with you. You feel it when you succeed and suddenly sense you've outrun someone you love. You feel it when you dream too boldly, only to be pierced by guilt. You feel it when you try to step forward, but something ancient tugs you back. What if your self-sabotage isn't just yours? What if you are carrying unconscious loyalty to generations who could not afford to dream, to expand, to heal? What if the moment you try to become more, you're haunted by a debt you never signed for? Family systems therapy has long understood a deeply unsettling truth. We unconsciously repeat or restrict ourselves in service of belonging to our family system. And nowhere is this more evident than in sabotage. You may wonder why, just when you're about to break through, shame slithers in like smoke under the door. Why your success feels like betrayal. Why you keep yourself small, not out of fear, but out of reverence. You are trying not to leave anyone behind. Imagine your mother who buried her dreams under sacrifice. Your father who numbed his spirit with work and silence. Your grandmother who endured silently, asking for nothing. Your grandfather who hardened into survival because softness would have killed him. And now you, this strange anomaly with the audacity to want more, to heal, to feel, to live a life of depth and beauty. But with every step forward, you feel the ghostly weight of those who couldn't or wouldn't. It's not logical. It's visceral. Sabotage becomes a form of grief, a ritual, an unspoken apology to the past. This is what Viktor Frankl hinted at when he said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. But what if the situation you're trying to change is encoded in generations of nervous systems, beliefs, and silent agreements? These are the invisible contracts we sign as children. I'll stay anxious if it means I get to stay close. I'll fail quietly so no one feels ashamed. I'll struggle so I never make anyone else feel small. You don't write these contracts in ink. You write them in silence, in glances, in the stories not told, and the emotions never named. This is why self-sabotage often spikes during moments of elevation. Your success becomes unbearable not because it's undeserved, but because it violates a family myth. If everyone before you endured, who are you to thrive? If no one healed, who are you to be whole? Your nervous system internalizes this dissonance as danger, not because it's logical, but because loyalty to the tribe is survival. And so you dim, you delay, you destroy quietly, invisibly, even gracefully, all to maintain equilibrium with a lineage that lives inside you. But here's the radical truth. Healing yourself doesn't dishonor them. It liberates them. When you heal, you end the repetition. When you succeed without shame, you model new possibility. When you feel fully, you become the expression of every ancestor who wasn't allowed to. You are not betraying your family by breaking patterns. You are betraying them by not. Because what they endured was not meant to be a template. It was meant to be a bridge. A legacy of resilience, not resignation. You carry their pain, yes, but you also carry their unlived hopes. When you self-sabotage, you imprison both. When you rise, you resurrect them. So the next time guilt claws at your joy, ask, whose permission am I still waiting for? Because you don't need to abandon your past to honor your future. You just need to stop mistaking sabotage for loyalty. We live in a world obsessed with performance. You are told to be more productive, more focused, more optimized, as though you are not a human soul, but a machine awaiting an update. From the minute you wake up, the noise begins. Hustle harder. Grind now, rest later. Failure means you didn't want it bad enough. And so, your wounds are not tended to. They are monetized. Your fear of not being good enough becomes a market. Your inner critic is amplified, polished, and sold back to you through screens that whisper, "You're falling behind." But here's the great irony. The very culture that claims to motivate you is the one that keeps you sabotaging. Because if you healed, if you genuinely believed in your worth, if you no longer felt like you had to earn love through achievement, you wouldn't need to buy, scroll, compare, or hustle to prove it. Self-sabotage isn't just an internal flaw, it's a symptom of external conditioning. You are bombarded with curated lives, carefully staged and filtered to perfection. Every scroll tells you, you should be more than you are. And when you inevitably fall short of that impossible standard, you begin to internalize the failure. You don't pause to question the system. You blame yourself. You don't ask whether the ladder you're climbing leads anywhere worth going. You punish yourself for not climbing fast enough. And so, sabotage becomes your protest. You delay the email, miss the workout, skip the meditation, not because you're lazy, but because your soul is rebelling against a system that equates your value with your utility. You're tired, not broken. You're overwhelmed, not incapable. You are, in fact, responding appropriately to a culture that thrives on your chronic dissatisfaction. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." But what if your why has been hijacked? What if you're chasing goals that were never yours to begin with? What if your ambition is performative, driven not by desire, but by fear of being seen as unworthy, lazy, invisible? This is the trap of modern culture. It sells you your own insecurity as inspiration. And then, when you break down, it offers you 10 productivity hacks and a dopamine detox to fix what it helped fracture. So where does sabotage fit into this? It's your unconscious resistance to being used. Your refusal to become another cog, another brand, another achievement checklist in human skin. When you miss a deadline or skip a task, part of you feels like a failure. But look closer. Another part of you is saying, "I will not build a life that costs me myself." Of course, not all ambition is hollow. Of course, discipline matters. But there's a difference between discipline born of love and discipline born of fear. The first expands you, the second shrinks you until all that's left is a resume and a curated feed. To heal sabotage, you must question not only your psychology but your society. You must ask, is my self-betrayal actually a form of self-protection against a world that never lets me rest? Sometimes, your sabotage is simply your soul whispering, I don't want to live like this anymore. And that voice, that's not your failure. That's your compass. So now you've seen it. You've looked into the mirror and witnessed the quiet architecture of your self-sabotage. How it was carved by childhood survival, inherited through lineage, and reinforced by a culture addicted to performance. But awareness alone doesn't free you, because even now, knowing what you know, the pattern might still return. You may still find yourself shrinking in the moments you were meant to rise, still canceling the plans, still ghosting the opportunities, still reaching for the escape hatch. And that's okay. The goal was never to become perfect. The goal is to become conscious, to stop waging war against the parts of you that learned to protect you through destruction. You see, the saboteur doesn't disappear by being silenced. It evolves by being understood. Imagine sitting with it, not as an enemy, but as a wounded child who never got to grow up. Ask it, what are you afraid will happen if I succeed? What part of me are you trying to keep safe? What truth am I avoiding by staying small? You'll find that beneath the sabotage is grief. Grief for who you could have been if love had been safe. Grief for how long you've mistaken self-abandonment for peace. And this grief, when fully felt, not fixed, begins the alchemical process. You become sovereign when you stop trying to exile your pain and instead sit beside it. You become free when you stop seeing sabotage as a flaw and begin to treat it as a message. Every act of self-destruction contains a fragment of wisdom. The binge is a hunger for wholeness. The procrastination is fear dressed as perfection. The retreat from intimacy is a longing to be held without having to perform. When you decode these signals, you realize your sabotage was never the problem. It was the language. It was your psyche's way of saying, something inside me still believes I'm not safe. And now, finally, you're listening. Jean Houston once wrote, "You are not a passive observer in the cosmos. You are a co-creator of reality." This is the turning point. When you stop living reactively and begin living ritually, with intention, with awareness, with reverence for your own complexity. So how do you integrate? Start small. Not with dramatic resolutions, but with tiny acts of rebellion against your old story. Send the message you would have delayed. Rest without apology. Finish something even if it's imperfect. Speak the truth, even when your voice trembles. Each time you do, you are rewiring the self. You are teaching your nervous system. Safety can coexist with expansion. You are becoming the parent, the partner, the protector your saboteur always needed. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before you were taught to be afraid of yourself. And that version of you, the one who dreams, dares, desires, that is the real self. The saboteur was just the bodyguard who forgot the war was over. There will still be resistance. That's normal. Growth is not a straight line. Healing is not linear. But every time you choose presence over avoidance, every time you choose self-trust over self-doubt, you reclaim another piece of your soul. And eventually, the sabotage softens. It no longer drives the car. It just sits quietly in the passenger seat, nodding in respect to the self that finally came home.